What would help B12 absorption? A supplement with methylated B12, normal serum level, and symptoms of low B12. Melanie, I would get your B12 checked, because if you have normal serum levels but symptoms, it may not mean that you're B12 deficient. I mean, B12 deficiency symptoms match a lot of other things, right? So folate deficiency can cause the same symptoms that a B12 deficiency can cause. It may not be B12. You may be taking and getting enough. Now, the best way to improve your absorption, especially with a history of gluten sensitivity and gut damage, is to use a sublingual or a lozenge, which will absorb through the mucosa in your cheeks. And so if you have any damage in your stomach and small intestine, it'll bypass that by absorbing directly through your cheek. Can you eat eggs every day for breakfast? You can, provided you're not allergic to them. Yeah, you absolutely can. I would just say take caution around the quality of the egg that you're purchasing, and just make sure it's good quality, and that the chickens preferentially are true free range, not the doors open but they're still locked inside type free range. Recommendations for leaky gut: gluten, dairy, grain-free, all organic meats and vegetables. Lots of them, but it's, the generalized recommendations for leaky gut, I would say you've got to figure out what your microbiome looks like. And if you haven't had that tested, work with a good functional practitioner to get that measured. Because at the end of the day, if you do have leaky gut, you want to know why you have it. Leaky gut is not just this thing that happens randomly that you take a supplement to fix. I mean, there are a number of things that can be beneficial, like L-glutamine. I have a product formula called LGS Support, which stands for leaky gut support. And there are a number of different things that can be beneficial for the gut, like butyrate and probiotics and the right diet. But why you have leaky gut is more important, and that's what you really want to figure out. Marley, as far as a clean seaweed recommendation, just look for organic. That's what you want to look for, is an organic version of seaweed. Can you have iodine if you have Hashimoto's? Yes, you can. There's a lot of people on the internet saying that you shouldn't. I disagree with that 1,000%. I don't think that taking iodine flares Hashimoto's. I think if you look at, and we use the Japanese as the example here. The Japanese in their diet get far more iodine per day because of their seafood levels in their diet than most of you would ever get through any kind of supplementation. And it doesn't cause them. They have some of the lowest incidence of Hashimoto. So I would say it's perfectly fine. Now, that being said, as with anything, if you have a concern and a disease that you're being monitored, it's always best to have that monitored while you're supplementing. Make sure that you're doing the right things for you. See, go back up just a little on the left. I'm grain-free, gluten-free almost 1 year, according to No Grain, No Pain. I have autoimmune and lupus. After 1 year, I'm facing arthritities in my thumb. Is it due to leaky gut or any food exposure? It could be. I've seen cases where people followed No Grain, No Pain perfectly, but they were allergic to key foods that are generally healthy for other people, and that might be part of where your pain is coming from. It's a possibility. There are other possibilities as well. Liquid fasting to heal leaky gut. You can. Water and bone broth or broth fasting can be very, very effective at allowing the gut the rest and the time it needs to heal and repair. So somebody mentioned I took one iodine capsule and my heart rate went up. One of the things that happens, Nancy, in people that have a side effect to iodine, there are a group of chemicals called halides. And so that's iodine, bromine, fluoride, and chlorine. So what I see sometimes is a person is too high in one of those three or several of those three. When you take iodine, it can serve as a detox because it pushes those things out, and sometimes that can make you symptomatic. And so, it may not be that you're reacting to the iodine per se. It may be that the iodine is mobilizing and pulling these things out of your tissue and out of your thyroid, and that you're experiencing that elevation as a result of that happening. And that being said, it's also smart that you check your thyroid levels. I mean, if that happened with iodine, check your thyroid levels. Now, it's important to know, too, if you're taking high doses of iodine and you go get your thyroid levels checked, iodine will artificially inflate your TSH. And so what happens, let's say you're taking 12 milligrams of iodine a day, you go to your doctor, they measure your TSH, and it will come back, normal range for TSH is 0.5 to 4.5. But sometimes, if you're on iodine, it pushes it up. I've seen it go into the 30s, right? And then doctors that are treating you start freaking out because they don't know that iodine can cause an artificial elevation in TSH. So now they're wanting to double or triple your medicine, which would be a mistake. The right thing to do in this situation is to discontinue iodine for 2 weeks and then recheck your TSH and see where it falls, and that will give you a true norm. But you got to be careful. This is why I say if your doctor doesn't understand nutrition and you're trying to manipulate nutrients on your own, and you've got a pre-existing problem, it's better and smarter to work with somebody who knows what they're doing. Let's see here. What are the better ways to assess levels and body utilization of choline, acetylcholine, betaine, and other related chemicals? I mean, the best way to assess levels is, choline, the best way to measure it, in my opinion, is intracellular choline levels. That's going to give you a great indication of the potential for deficit. There aren't any great tests to measure acetylcholine. There are tests, but not great. Same thing with betaine, but measuring intracellular choline. Could a prolapsed uterus have anything to do with gluten? It could, but most likely, Diana, it has more to do with a weakening in your pelvic cavity, in your pelvic floor. And so seeing a pelvic floor physical therapy expert or specialist might be a really good thing for you to do to help with that. Do drugs block acetylcholine? There are many drugs that interfere with acetylcholine. If you've ever heard of the disease myasthenia gravis, that's a disease where you produce antibodies that block acetylcholine receptors. And it can cause things like facial paralysis and eyelid drooping, and among other symptoms. Problem with choline bitartrate is that it contains corn. Don't take it, it's junk. How much choline? I answered that one already. If the phosphatidylcholine is non-GMOs, it's still problematic. Probably less so. I mean, if the manufacturer is a good manufacturer and they're doing pesticide testing, then I would say you'd probably be okay in that regard, being that it would be non-GMO. I can't read the question. Do you take choline citrate in a powder or liquid? I have a formula, Sandra. We use it in a liquid, and that's the way you get high dose choline without having to take 8 pills a day. You can take, a teaspoon to 2 teaspoons a day if you're using, I don't know if we put that link up there or not, but choline citrate, ultracholine is my formulation that you can check out. 87-year-old mother had a hip operation, lost blood, then had COVID. She took pain pills and doesn't drink enough. Liver enzymes are now double. Ferritin is 4 times too high. What can it be related to? Well, I mean, she just had surgery. I would imagine you'd first have to start by looking at her different medicines, because a lot of the medicines can impact and affect the liver. And so that would be the first place that I would look. It would be for drug-induced liver damage, and talk with her doctor, or, if she's, depending on, if she takes care of herself, talk to her. But if you take care of her with her doctors, then I would talk to her doctors about any medicines, because that a lot of times is drug-induced liver damage that occurs, especially post-op, post-surgery, with all the pain medications and antibiotics and everything else that have been used. Yeah, Rose says my ferritin's 1,500 plus. Yeah, you got a major liver problem, Rose. You better get that checked out. In regard to homocysteine regulation, do you typically have to take mega doses of B12 or folate, for example, as is often prescribed, or can lower doses accomplish the goal typically? Typically, it depends. It depends on a multitude of different factors. It depends on whether or not you're deficient in 1 B vitamin, 2 B vitamins, 3 B vitamins, whether or not you are deficient in choline, if you're deficient in all. Generally speaking, a well-rounded B complex can drive it down, but in some people it won't. And that's just because the B12 level, I see this a lot with oral supplements where, especially when the B12 is not given sublingually, you really have a hard time pushing homocysteine down in a person who has previous GI damage as a result of poor diet or gluten. And so in that case, you have a hard time getting homocysteine down with like a capsule type of supplement. How best to cook eggs to get the choline? There's not a best way. Hard boil them, scramble them, fry them in a healthy oil if you're going to fry them. Any of those are going to be great ways to get the egg to get the choline. What are the potential side effects of creatine monohydrate? Mostly dehydration. It's not even really dehydration. When you take a lot of creatine to build muscle mass, that creatine pulls water into the muscle. So if you're already dehydrated, you can become more dehydrated. So you just have to make sure that you take a lot of water with creatine. But creatine's been around in the bodybuilding world for, 40 years. It's very safe. There really aren't any major side effects for it. Let's say if you have any pre-existing kidney disease, just have your doctor monitor your kidney markers. But I mean, it's generally a very safe thing to take. As far as a loading dose, many people find better results when they load creatine in the first 7 days. So instead of just taking 5 grams a day, they load it for 7 days. They load 25 grams a day for 7 days, and then go to 5 grams a day. And that's something that that's something that you just would. Personal choice, and depending on what your goals are. How can I get omega-3 if I'm allergic to most fish? You said most fish, Mary. So there are lots of different kinds of fish. I'd try to find one that you're not allergic to, because outside of that, you're dealing with plant-based sources, and theirs are not direct omega-3. If you go back and watch my show from last week, we did a deep dive on omega-3. You could also use grass-fed beef. True grass-fed, grass-finished beef has omega-3 in it as well. Yeah, I like this question, and I'm actually in conversations with some people about this at this time, and I can't give you more than that information. But the question is, any knowledge of blood banks that deal in clean blood, from a non-vaccinated individual? The biggest fear and the biggest worry is the spike proteins contaminating blood, if you needed blood. And so there are several people right now behind the scenes working on blood bank storage options for that. And if I get more information, I'll come back and be more succinct about it. But at this time, I don't have anything definitive to tell you, other than to look into storing your own blood. And there are some blood banks that do allow you to store your own blood. But again, it goes bad, so you can't store it indefinitely. So like if you're planning on doing a surgery and you didn't want to take a blood donor's blood and you wanted to store your own blood for that surgery, you could store your blood for, I think, a matter of a month or two before it wouldn't be usable. So, but that's something you'd plan. I think I answered that one. So eating eggs raw, you can do it, but I mean, I don't really recommend it. I mean, here's why I don't recommend it. If you're eating a raw egg from a grocery store, the likelihood that you'll get salmonella or something, probably not all that great, because those eggs are so sterilized and have gone through so much of a process. But if you're buying from a local farmer, I mean, if you've ever raised chickens, they poop on their eggs, right? And so this is where that risk can come in. So it's just my advice, it is definitely better to cook the egg than to try to eat it raw. There's also, if you eat raw eggs in high quantities because you're trying to get choline, one of the things that raw eggs contain is a protein called iodine, which will inhibit biotin absorption, and so you can actually induce a biotin deficiency by eating a lot of raw eggs. If you remember the days of Rocky Balboa, right, where the raw egg shakes that everybody was so crazy about with the leg warmers and the headbands, right? Remember those fun 80s, late 70s, 80s times? We learned that lesson, back then. So I would just say be cautious. Okay, it's time to go home. It's, what is it, 7:20? Man, I always go over. Thanks for staying with me on Monday night. Thanks for, thanks for tuning in and spending your time with me. I hope you take away something. Look, if you're new to the show and you find this useful, know what our mission is. Our mission is to save 100 million lives. And so we implore all of you to help us, because the censorship is outrageous these days. And the only way we reach people is through word of mouth, right? So share this information. Copy and paste the URLs and the links and send it to a friend who you think might be benefited. And tag us when you share it. Tag it and give us the tag. Say hashtag save 100 million lives. The other thing you can do is go over to glutenfreesociety.org. That's our foundation. Sign up for our newsletter. It's free. I'll send you more information than you could ever dream, even imagine getting through. I mean, we have thousands of articles and videos there for free for you to access, to just learn about nutrition, to learn about the true gluten-free diet, to learn about what it means to really be healthy and how to achieve great health, right? And to empower yourself to reach that goal. So make sure you come visit me. I'll see you next Monday for another episode of Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. Have a fantastic week. Hey, if you've got a functional medicine or health question that you'd like me to answer for you, make sure you send me an email, glutenology@gmail.com, and we'll do our best to create a video answer just for you. Have a great day.